Hey everyone, welcome to Broadband Deployment News. There are some questions as to whether there's enough time for internet service providers and communities and other stakeholders to be able to do challenges for the data that's going to be in the broadband data map, because they're wanting those. The FCC's come out and said those challenges should be done by the end of this week. But consumers can make those challenges, and the FCC has provided some tools to be able to promote that. Be right back and show you some of those. Thanks for joining me. Rick Uzzi here with Broadband Deployment News. So as I mentioned, oops, let me get my browser going here. There are some questions as to whether these challenges are going to be done in time, because the timeline, we're trying to get the broadband money out as quickly as possible. And the timeline is pretty short, especially considering now ISPs are actually also already in the process of putting in their second round of availability into the broadband data collection system. So we're seeing, you see headlines like this. This was December 29th. FCC pushes broadband map forward, but time is running short. So there's a lot of questions there. You get the background here they're giving. So June 30th through September 1st is the period when internet service providers loaded their first round of data into the broadband data collection system. So that at that point, the broadband fabric was out, the first fabric, which is which was contracted to CostQuest by the FCC, and that is all the serviceable locations in the country. It's not saying that they have service. It's saying that these are locations that should be broadband serviceable. In other words, these are homes, in neighborhoods. These are, individual homes off of side roads. These are farms that maybe have multiple kinds of structures. These are apartment buildings that have multiple units. All of these are structures, broadband serviceable locations. So then the internet service providers in this period here, June 30th through September 1st, uploaded the locations where they provide service on top of that data set of serviceable locations. So first of all, we know there were issues with the broadband fabric, the serviceable locations. We knew that there were lots of locations that were not actually on the map, or maybe in the wrong place, that kind of thing. So starting on September 15th, the FCC opened up a challenge process on that broadband fabric, where broadband service providers, communities, other stakeholders could go into the fabric and challenge the location data. So they've had that amount of time to challenge the fabric. And that, I think, encompasses a lot of the really big discrepancy that we saw, where, like a state might say, hey, we've got 30,000 addresses that are missing in here. So a lot of those hopefully were corrected through these fabric challenges, assuming that the states and others had time to do that. But they did have 4 months to do that, to look at that data and make those challenges. Some may not have had, as we'll see here in a minute. So that was the locations. And then the broadband maps came out. That was based on the initial fabric, not the corrected fabric. Okay, so the initial fabric that had all of those mistakes, that is what the first pre-production draft version of the broadband map was based on, was that original fabric that we know is that wrong or incorrect. First pass at it, best effort, I guess, on collecting all of that really difficult information to collect on which structure, every structure in the United States that should have broadband. So that came out, the first map came out November 18th based on that initial fabric that was not challenged yet. And then people have been looking at that map, and that map can be challenged. So individual consumers can go on that map and do their own challenges, which would be great to have every person in the country do that, to go in and say, yeah, I have broadband here, or I don't have this type of service, or even they say they give this service and I can buy this service, but I'm telling you, I have this service and it's not this fast. They can even challenge that, although that's going to have a lower priority in a lot of cases. From the FCC standpoint, in order to get which challenges they looked at, depending on the speed. So in any event, November 18th, the FCC map came out. People have been challenging that, and then the FCC took the broadband fabric and all the challenges that were made on that broadband fabric, and they made a new fabric that came out on January 3rd, and that's been now provided access to that to ISPs and states and communities and other stakeholders that originally had the first fabric. So that fabric is now out now, and that is being used by broadband service providers to do their next round of broadband data collection filing. So they're now going to that new fabric, which hopefully has a lot of those initial mass bulk errors on there, hopefully bulk challenges that fix those. And ISPs are going in and uploading their data once again into that fabric. And now that should be much more accurate. So where ISPs were saying, hey, wait a minute, you missed a whole neighborhood here. Now that data is on the fabric, and they can put in their data on that. So the FCC's come out and said, as far as the broadband map, people that are making that challenge, that anybody challenging that data that's on the initial broadband map should try to get those challenges in by January 13th. That's this Friday, for that to have the best chance of making it into the production version of the map that's supposed to be out, my guess, sometime around mid-May. Because that map is going to be based on this next round of broadband data collection filings that ISPs are doing on the new fabric, right? So this is where it's a little bit out of sync. So people can still challenge the old map, but I don't think those, and they can do that up until, let's say, this Friday. But at that point, I think the FCC is saying at that point, any challenges after that, we're probably not going to get into the new map. ISPs have 2 months to respond to those challenges, and they only have to respond if it's something related to a location. Like, in other words, hey, you don't actually have service here, or you actually don't have fiber service here, or I can't buy gig service here, and it's you say you provide gig, but I can't buy that. Those kinds of things can be challenged. But saying that, hey, you say you're at this speed, and I'm getting a lower speed, that can be challenged, but the ISPs don't have to respond to that challenge. And what the FCC has said, if they see a pattern there, then they will look at those things. And as I've said in the past, I think they're going to be looking at those kinds of challenges, speed challenges, certainly in the beginning, in the short term here, only if it is something that would impact funds that should be distributed to a state. So if those challenges are about a service that's supposed to be getting 500 megabits per second and people are saying they're only getting 250 or something like that, that's not nearly as important as somebody where it says they're getting 25 by 3 service. That's the maximum advertised speed, but they're really only getting like 10, because that person was on the cusp of broadband service according to the current FCC definition, and they're not getting broadband service if that's what they're actually seeing. So those kinds of speed challenges will be looked at more closely, let's say, than something higher than that. So again, these kinds of headlines and stories we're seeing here, again, it's got right here, the NTIA is wanting to get all of these funding announcements, the amount that each state should have out by June 30th. So let's say the FCC Broadband Map comes out mid-May, late May, I don't know, sometime in that time frame. And then the NTIA is going to look at all that data, and that's going to be what determines how much each state gets. So again, hopefully the vast majority of really severe errors, like the thousands of things missing, have already been corrected in the fabric. And hopefully those kinds of things will be reflected in this new map. But there will be, I'm sure, lots of individual little locations in each state, probably, that are going to be wrong. I don't know if that'll balance out or what, but we'll have to see how accurate things look. I guess we'll just be listening to see how accurate this next fabric is. So, you got some, here you see state office may not challenge broadband maps, risking hundreds of millions of federal funds for Texas. So this would be an example in Texas where they were saying they're not going to challenge the funds, challenge the map. Billions of dollars are up for grabs next month to expand broadband availability across the country. When was this from? This was December 20th, so this was back in December. But the maps will determine where the money goes. But the maps that will determine where the money goes are inaccurate, according to the Texas Comptroller, because the internet service providers inflated their coverage areas. So this seems to be less about missing locations and more what they're saying about ISPs saying their coverage areas were inflated. Now, I don't know if that means they're saying, maybe it is locations. In other words, they're saying that their coverage areas are bigger than they're saying, and not so much that the speeds are wrong. I don't know. But the Texas office charged with challenging and improving those maps at the state level says it can't. And that could lead to hundreds of millions of dollars on the table that should have gone to expanding broadband in underserved areas. Hunt and other broadband advocates were surprised when the November newsletter from the State Broadband Development Office said it would not file a challenge to the current broadband maps and instead asked communities to do it, potentially costing the state hundreds of millions through the broadband or through the BEAD program. The office is by statute charged with challenging the broadband maps, but in November newsletter said the day the federal government, but in the November newsletter, the day the federal government issued its new maps, said it couldn't. According to the BDO, it can't because Lightbox, the company it paid millions to map Texas and to find at the granular level what availability looks like throughout the state, hasn't reached an agreement with the FCC. So this is interesting. The issue at hand really doesn't have anything to do with Lightbox, said Eric Frank, CEO of Lightbox. Frank said that his company did its job, but Texas can't give the data to the FCC if the agency's federal contractor, CostQuest, can turn around and use it commercially, giving its competitors free labor and intellectual property. If they did, it would hurt hundreds of companies like his who did this work for states and communities. So this is really annoying. So you've got two vendors here. So you've got CostQuest. CostQuest won the contract from the FCC to put together the broadband fabric, all of the locations that are supposed to have broadband. They won that, and then Lightbox challenged that. Lightbox basically challenged that, which caused a delay. But the FCC worked through that, and the FCC still stuck with CostQuest. So Lightbox was out of that deal. But Lightbox has been mapping states. So states are paying Lightbox millions of dollars. The FCC has paid CostQuest millions of dollars. So who owns this data? I would think that the taxpayers own this data. So the FCC, is using taxpayer dollars to build these maps. Texas is using either state Texas dollars or possibly federal income tax dollars because they could be using planning funds to help defray the cost of these maps. So it's all taxpayer funded, right? So it seems like the public should own these maps, and it seems like CostQuest and Lightbox need to get together, and they should not be able to claim any of this data because it's being paid for by we the people, right? So we should have access to this data. We should be able to go in and look at it, within certain parameters. You don't want to, you don't want to provide lots of confidential information to just everybody out on the street, but certainly stakeholders that should be able to get this information, certainly states, communities, stakeholders should be able to get access to the information. Anything that's paid for, by the state of Texas, that should be licensable by certain entities. The same thing for the federal government. And this should be able to be used back and forth. Lightbox should have access to the CostQuest data that's in the fabric, and CostQuest should have access to, if provided by the state of Texas, to anything that the state of Texas provides in order to challenge the CostQuest data. This is really annoying. But that's one of the issues that the states have been saying, is that they can't necessarily challenge based on that. And then you've got here Vermont, they're pushing for an extension. You've got several entities, states, and I think senators that are pushing for 30 days to 60 days extension to get these challenges in on time because of the short turnaround. But of course, then you're balancing, do we want to wait 30 to 60 more days to finally get broadband rolling? Maybe it's worth it to make sure the maps are correct, or do we want to get this out as quickly as possible if we think we're at a point where we're close enough where it's not really going to make a difference? So that's a question that's being looked at right now. Here you see officials urging residents to check FCC broadband map accuracy at their locations. So this is northescambia.com, and it's for, we're talking about Escambia and Santa Rosa counties. They're asking residents there, and this is great, to ask residents to go in and check to see, hey, go in and check your address, see what it says about broadband, and then you can challenge that if that's not correct. And that way we can get a lot of crowdsourced data from consumers through this process to check their broadband. Same thing here. You see, this is the Times Observer. This is in, I think it was Warren, Pennsylvania, if I remember when I was looking at this. Same thing. Residents urged to check broadband status. So lots of communities are doing that, and more should be, and more states should be doing this as well. And I just wanted to point out for anybody, communities, states, or whoever, that there is this outreach toolkit that the FCC has provided to help promote this, the fact that we want consumers to go in and make the broadband map better. And this can be an ongoing process, right? So as soon as possible, if possible, let's say by Friday, we get lots of challenges in there, then that can be hopefully looked at in time to be incorporated in the next map that comes out in the spring, late spring, let's say. So sooner rather than later, but even then, this is going to be an ongoing process that consumers can do. So I was just going to show that on this site, you've got, and I'll link to this, you've got flyers, let's see, poster to help improve national broadband. So I'll click on that real quick. I'm going to open these in separate tabs because it keeps closing. So you got posters here, check the national broadband map, and gives you some information on how to do that. QR code probably to pull it up on mobile there. Then you've got consumer tip cards, consumer handout. Let's see what that looks like. So, and again, a QR code with, looks like a little thing that you can hand out, cut into 4 little pieces and have four little copies of that. Fact sheet. So things like that. Then you've got audio. You'll probably be able to hear this on my mic, I think, if I've got this turned on here. Let's see. This is a 15-second PSA.
Did you know there's a new national broadband map? You can learn more about the internet services available in your area and help improve the maps by visiting broadbandmap.fcc.gov. Again, that's broadbandmap.fcc.gov.
And there's a, whoops, that's one that I did not. Got to go back on that. And then you've got 30-second one as well. You've got a script, and then you've got the actual MP3 file. So, this could be played on local radio or something like that. You've got some demos on YouTube that they've made available. You got a availability challenge demo mobile browser, a fabric challenge demo mobile browser. So this is going to be more consumers. I don't know if they can make, well, maybe the fabric challenge would be actually location versus a service. I don't know, but let's take a quick look at this. Make that bigger. Where am I? There.
The FCC has a new map showing where internet service is and is not available across the country. We need your help to ensure the information on the map about the internet services available to your home or small business is accurate. On your mobile device, go to broadbandmap.fcc.gov. Type your address in the search bar and select the best match from the list that displays. Your location will appear as a point on the map.
So you can see here, this is a lot of good information for consumers on how to challenge the data there. So it's already here available so that anybody can use this.
Challenge from the drop-down list. Options include the reported service is not available, or the provider is requesting more than a standard installation fee to get you connected. You can upload files like emails or screenshots to support your challenge.
So again, lots of, let me get this back to small. Oops.
Or you can write a description of your experience in the form. Be sure to check this.
There we go. And where I am. There we are. Okay. So as you can see, lots of good information on here. Where do I get back to my page here? So again, you've got audio and video, social media posts, some other help resources right here. So these would be great for, as I say, any kinds of community organizations, states, anybody that's trying to get as much accurate information on the map as possible to be able to use this information on this toolkit to be able to promote that. So it's material that's already available. Don't need to create anything. You might want to tweak it or whatever. But like I say, even if you just want to run with what they have and link to it and just inform consumers, hey, you can be part of the solution here in getting more accurate broadband information about our country, through this broadband map, just by checking your own particular address. Lots of consumers have done that. The chairman of the FCC, Chairman Rosenworcel, came out and said that they've already received thousands of challenges, and that was a couple of weeks ago. So I'm sure there've been a lot more since then, and that's really good information to be able to get in, and this will help promote that. So I thought that was interesting. If you did too, if you'd give me a thumbs up on the video, I'd appreciate it. If you're not subscribed, click the subscribe button, click the bell, and be notified when I'm live. Thanks for joining me for Broadband Deployment News. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.